Okay, time for convening having arrived. Senate will come to order. Doesn't feel like we were gone that long, does it? Back already. Chair recognizes the distinguished senator from the 53rd.
Good morning, Mr. President. In fact, I got my cot out of the floor this morning to get ready for today's session. A moment in history back in 1875, the first cruelty to animals legislation and cruelty to senator from 7th District was signed into law. The journal's been read, found to be correct, and it's a big journal. Took all night.
Thank you, Senator, for staying up late last night and then into the wee early morning to do the journal. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? Reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? Chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators having bills and resolutions to introduce, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions.
Senate Bill 483 by Senator Jordan VI and others. The bill will be titled Enactment, Chapter 4, Title 20 of the
Health and Human Services.
Senate Resolution 942 by Senator Davenport of the 44th and others. A resolution honoring
Transportation.
Senate Resolution 943 by Senator Harbison of the 15th. A resolution honoring the life. Senate Resolution 944 by Senator Davenport of the 44th and others.
Transportation.
Senate Resolution 947 by Senator Davenport of the 44th and others.
Transportation.
Mr. President, that concludes the order.
First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions.
House Bill 81 by Representative McCall of the 33rd and others.
Finance.
House Bill 332 by Representative Watson of the 172nd.
Appropriations.
House Bill 374 by Representative Knight of the 130th.
Finance.
House Bill 410 by Representative Powell of the 32nd and others. The bill will be titled
Judiciary.
House Bill 489 by Representative McCall of the 33rd and others. The bill will be titled
Economic Development.
House Bill 494 by Representative Dempsey of the 13th and others.
Education and Youth.
House Bill 419 by
Health and Human Services.
House Bill 519 by Representative Cooper of the 43rd and others.
Health and Human Services.
House Bill 605 by Representative Spencer of the 180th and others.
Judiciary.
House Bill 624 by Representative Battles of the 15th and others. The bill will be titled Enactment.
Retirement.
House Bill 642 by Representative Nimmer of the 178th and others. The bill will be titled Enactment.
Economic Development.
House Bill 673 by Representative Carson of the 46th and others. The bill will be titled
Judiciary.
House Bill 696 by Representative Kelly the 16th and others. The bill will be titled Enactment. House Bill 707 by Representative Price of the 48th and others. The bill will be titled Enactment.
Slow go, suspend. Secretary will read.
House Bill 708 by Representative Raffensperger of the 50th.
Slow go.
House Bill 710 by Representative Jones of the 47th and others.
Slow go.
House Bill 711 by Representative Jones of the 47th. A bill with
Slow go.
House Bill 712 by Representative Martin of the 49th.
Slow go.
House Bill 713 by Representative Chandler of the 105th.
Health and Human, excuse me, Higher Education.
House Bill 718 by Representative Scott of the 76th and others. A bill with Enactment.
Education and Youth.
House Bill 754 by Representative Shaw of the 176th and others. A bill with
Insurance and Labor.
House Bill 759 by Representative Turner of the 21st.
Education and Youth.
House Bill 764 by Representative Clark of the 98th and others. A bill with Enactment.
Health and Human Services.
House Bill 765 by Representative Thomas.
Judiciary.
House Bill 775 by Representative Powell of the 32nd and others. A bill with Enactment. Chapter 39A.
Regulated Industries.
House Bill 779 by Representative Powell of the 32nd and others. A bill with Enactment. Chapter 3.
Public Safety.
House Bill 791 by Representative Administration of the 104th.
Judiciary.
House Bill 793 by Representative Lauricia of the 169th.
Finance Committee.
House Bill 803 by Representative Willard of the 51st and others. A bill with Enactment.
Health and Human Services.
House Bill 808 by Representative Nimmer of the 178th.
Judiciary.
House Bill 811 by Representative Powell of the 171st and others.
Finance.
House Bill 818 by Representative Hawkins of the 27th and others.
Insurance and Labor.
House Bill 820 by Representative Beskin of the 54th and others.
Finance.
House Bill 831 by Representative Roger of the 10th and others.
Economic Development.
House Bill 834 by Representative Ballinger.
Judiciary.
House Bill 843 by Representative Shaw of the 176th.
Economic Development.
House Bill 844 by Representative Houston of the 170th.
Health and Human Services.
House Bill 852 by Representative Smith of the 41st.
Education and Youth.
House Bill 863 by Representative Glen of the 75th and others.
Slow go.
House Bill 869 by Representative Bruce of the 61st and
Slow
others.
go.
House Bill 870 by Representative Bruce of the 61st and others. A bill
Slow go.
House Bill 878 by Representative Clark of the 147th and others. A bill
Insurance and Labor.
House Bill 879 by Representative Jones with 167th and others.
Natural Resources.
House Bill 887 by Representative Powell with 171st and others. A bill by title.
Regulated Industries.
House Bill 897 by Representative Illustration of the 104th and others. A bill by title.
Judiciary.
House Bill 899 by Representative LaRiccia of the 169th.
Economic Development.
House Bill 900 by Representative Caldwell of the 131st and others.
Slogo.
House Bill 901 by Representative Hatch of the 150th and others.
Slogo.
House Bill 904 by Representative Hanson.
Agriculture.
House Bill 911 by Representative 930th and others.
Slogo.
House Bill 912 by Representative 930th and others.
Slogo.
House Bill 917 by Representative Dollar of the 45th and others.
Judiciary.
House Bill 920 by Representative Dempsey the 13th
Health
and
and
others.
Human Services.
House Bill 921 by Representative Lumsden the 12th and others.
Slogo.
House Bill 927 by Representative Nimmer of the
Health
170th.
and Human Services.
House Bill 929 by Representative Illustration of the 140th.
Finance.
House Bill 930 by Representative Tanner of the 9th and others.
Transportation.
House Bill 933 by Representative Gertler of the 8th. A bill entitled Enactment.
Slogo.
House Bill 938 by Representative Taylor of the
Insurance and Labor.
House Bill 940 by Representative Cobble of the 111th and others. A bill entitled Enactment, Chapter 5, Title 40 of the OCGA relating to driver's
Public
license.
Safety.
House Bill 946 by Representative Clark of the 147th and others. A bill entitled
Slogo.
House Bill 951 by Representative Shaw of the 176th and others.
Economic Development.
House Bill 952 by Representative Tanner of the 9th. A bill entitled Enactment and Enact entitled.
Slogo.
House Bill 956 by Representative Perkle of the 150th.
Agriculture.
House Bill 972 by Representative Willard of
Health
the
and
50th.
Human Services.
House Bill 973 by Representative Jones of the 40th.
Ethics.
House Bill 978 by Representative Nimmer of the 178th and others. A bill-
Public Safety.
House Bill 982 by Representative Nimmer of the 178th and others. A bill entitled
Health
Enactment.
and Human Services.
House Bill 986 by Representative Nimmer of the 170th.
Slogo.
House Bill 992 by Representative Lott of the 122nd and
Public
others.
Safety.
House Bill 995 by Representative
Economic Development.
House Bill 996 by Representative Dempsey of
Health
the
and
13th.
Human Services.
House Bill 999 by Representative Coomer of the 14th.
Judiciary.
House Resolution 238 by Representative.
Appropriations.
House Resolution 444 by Representative McCall of the 33rd.
Transportation.
House Resolution 993 by Representative Illustration of the 104th and others.
Judiciary Committee.
Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Secretary will read reports or bills for the second time.
House Bill 441 by Representative Fleming, 121st and others. Trust establish qualified self-settled spendthrift trust provisions. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
No second readers or anything. We're done with that. All right. It is now time for our morning roll call. Time for the morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Any motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the senator from the 13th.
Mr. President, I'd ask for a unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 37th for business outside the Capitol.
37th, without objection, senator from the 37th will be excused. Chair recognizes senator from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for unanimous consent that we excuse the senator from the 27th for business outside the chamber.
27th, without objection, senator from the 27th will be excused. Any other motions to excuse? Senators, please signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. It is now time for our morning devotion. Time for our morning devotion. Would ask that all senators please take your seats and cease all audible conversation at this time as we are preparing for our morning devotion. Senators, please take your seats and cease all audible conversation at this time. Doorkeepers, please secure the chamber. It is now my distinct honor to recognize the senator from the 4th for the purpose of leading us in our pledge and introducing our chaplain of the day. Senator?
Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and to the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, moderation. Well, good morning, everybody. We've got a good audience this morning. Everybody's too tired to go out and wander in the halls, I suppose, but we're glad to see you this morning. It's an honor for me to introduce a pastor today who is not only a pastor of a well-known church in my district, but a good friend of long standing as well. Elder Mike Newman serves the Metter Primitive Baptist Church and has served there some 7 years. Prior to that, he served in churches in Jacksonville, Florida, Thomaston, Georgia, and over in Bullock County, where he now lives. With him today is his wife, Kathy, his son, School Resource Officer Ross Newman, and granddaughters Anna Marie Newman and Molly Grace Knight. Let's give them a hand, if you will, please. Glad to have you all today. Mike and his wife, Kathy, also have a daughter, Trissy, and 4 granddaughters as well. When I got to know Mike Newman, though, he was Master Sergeant Mike Newman of the Resource Management Squadron of the 165th Airlift Group in Savannah, and he served a total of 21 years. And even then, knowing him in that capacity, I knew then that he had a gift for people and a real love for those. As I've observed him in the Metter Primitive Baptist Church and visited that church, there's a real feeling of commitment and love that goes through that church, and you can feel it when he ministers to the congregation and shares his thoughts and shares Christ with them. I know that you would feel it too if you could join. I'd like for you to welcome our pastor of the day, Elder Mike Newman. Elder.
It is a great privilege to be here with you this morning. Want to say thank you to Senator Hill and also for his kind work with myself and many of our community and the work that he does and things that he does for us when we call upon him. He is a great blessing, not only to y'all, but to us. This morning, I want to share a thought with you, just a very little simple thought. I've titled it, Aligning Our Attitude with God's Will. The world in which we now live in breeds such an atmosphere of negativity that it's hard to keep ourselves focused on what is the truest important thing that is before us. We often, because of those negative vibrations that are around us, lose a sensitivity to the Spirit that should be leading and directing us in the paths of righteousness and holiness at all times. If one little hair on our head gets out of place, we often find ourselves in a tailspin. And in that tailspin, we grasp at the world to remain in control and often cause others to stumble and to fall at the same time as we fall. Nowhere in the Scripture does it indicate that God created us with an attitude of negativity. We never find Jesus with an attitude of negativity. He was always positive, even when things were not proceeding as he would have desired. How do we view the things in the lane of travel of life in which we find ourselves in? The great psalmist in Psalms 34 and verse 1 said, I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. The mentality of the psalmist was one of being positive, of seeking and doing those things that were positive in life. He was determined to stay focused on what was important. Note that I said from that passage of Psalms 34:1, I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall be continually in my mouth. I want to illustrate this little thought this morning with a little story that I found some time ago and that has meant so much to me. There was once a woman who woke up one morning and looked into the mirror and saw that she had only 3 hairs on her head. Great, she said. I think I'll braid my hair today. And so she did and had a wonderful, wonderful day. The next day, she woke up and looked into the mirror and saw that she had only 2 hairs on her head. She thought, and said to herself, I guess I'll part my hair down the middle today. And so she did and had a wonderful, wonderful day. The third day, she woke up and looked in the mirror and saw that she had only 1 hair left on her head. Wow, she said, today I get to wear my hair in a ponytail. And so she did and had a wonderful day. But on the 4th day, on that 4th day, she woke up and looked in the mirror and saw that there wasn't a single hair on her head. Thank God, she exclaimed. I was running out of things to do with my hair. What's the moral of this little lesson? Attitude is everything. Our attitude is everything. As the psalmist pointed out, as this illustration points out, our attitude should remain positive. Attitude is everything, and when our attitude aligns with God's will, great positive things can and will be accomplished in God's kingdom, our country, our state, and in our lives. At this time, I'm going to lead in a word of prayer. As you bow with me, Heavenly Father, we come before you today as the creator of heaven and earth, the giver of life and the sustainer of all things. As we come before your throne of grace, we do so with thanksgiving in our hearts, acknowledging our great and wonderful blessings, and we beg for your continued mercy, your grace, and love towards us. As we are gathered today with this distinguished group of senators, we thank you for each of them, for their love of the great state of Georgia, for their communities from whence they come, and the privilege that they have been entrusted with to lead this state. It is our prayer that each of them will be emptied of themselves, and we pray that you would bless them with godly wisdom and courage to enact laws that are pleasing in thy sight for the good of the people and of the state of Georgia. As we shared in today's devotion, let them and we all remember that attitude is everything. So, dear God, strengthen us, we pray, that our attitude aligns with your great and your holy will. And may you bless those who are weak, those who are wounded, sick, sorrowing, those who are afflicted in any way, those who have lost loved ones, and all who stand in need, whomever they may be or wherever they may be. Father, may your grace, your peace, your love abide with us both now and each day until you shall carry us home to heaven. This we ask in the most precious name of our Lord, our Savior, our Redeemer, Christ Jesus the Lord, and amen. Thank you.
We would like to present the Doctor of the Day, and to do so, it's my pleasure now to call upon the distinguished senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am honored to introduce our Doctor of the Day, Dr. Amara Devon. Dr. Devon is an anesthesiologist and interventional pain management physician with the Southeast Permanente Medical Group. He's been treating patients at Kaiser Permanente's Gwinnett and Glen Lake Specialty Centers since 2012. After graduating from Emory University, Dr. Devon received his medical degree from Georgetown University. He completed his residency in anesthesiology at New York Medical College and his pain management fellowship at Northwestern University in Chicago. He is board certified in anesthesiology and pain management. Dr. Devon and his wife Yasmin live in North Buckhead with their 3 young children. They are proud supporters of Sarah Smith Elementary School and Atlanta Public Schools. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Devon.
Good morning. On behalf of the Medical Association of Georgia and the Southeast Permanente Medical Group, I want to thank you for your efforts to ensure that we have a top-of-the-line healthcare system here in Georgia. The Southeast Permanente Medical Group is Georgia's largest physician-owned and physician-led integrated delivery system in Georgia with over 500 physicians. Today, we would love to invite you to lunch in room 230 from 11:30 to 1 p.m. so that we could get to know all of you better and you could get to know us as well. Thank you very much.
Well said. Well done. Thank you. Good. We have some special guests we'd like to recognize. Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 892 by Senators Miller the 49th and others, a resolution recognizing the long and steady friendship between Georgia and Japan shown by the 45th anniversary of the Office of the State of Georgia in Japan and for other purposes, whereas the Consulate General of Japan in the Southeast has strengthened the cultural, political, and economic ties between Japan and Georgia and has worked to help and support Japanese citizens and companies in the Southeast, and whereas Georgia has become a model for welcoming Japanese communities to the Southeast, and the region has grown to become an indispensable part of the Japanese-United States relationship, and whereas current trade between Japan and Georgia is nearly $6 billion in import and export trade. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize the 45th anniversary of the Office of the State of Georgia in Japan and commend the Consulate General's efforts to strengthen cultural, political, and economic ties between Japan and Georgia. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. It is a great honor to have the Japanese Council here with us today and to speak to the resolution and recognize our special guest. It's now my honor to call upon the President Pro Tem of the body, the Senator from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. President. It gives me great pleasure to come before this august body today and introduce friends of you, friends of yours, friends of this state, and friends of the United States of America. This is the 45th anniversary of the office in the state of Georgia for the country of Japan. This has been a long and steady friendship and a productive friendship over many, many years. Cities such as Atlanta, Gainesville, Augusta, and many more have sister city relationships with other cities in Japan, and we are very fortunate to have a wonderful economic and social and relationship with the country of Japan. Much has been derived from we've derived much benefit from their relationship with us and vice versa. And today, if you could get these folks to step forward or hold up their hand when I identify you. Yakuto Makarua, Naomi Takashami, and Tashuki Shizuka. And we also have with us from our august body across the way, Representatives Beth Beskins and Tom Taylor. Thomas, if you'd come forward and say a few words, we'd love for you to.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. President Pro Tem, honorable members of the Georgia State Senate, and dear friends. This is a huge honor and privilege to stand before you on behalf of my country as we celebrate the 45th anniversary of the Georgia's economic relationship with Japan. 45 years ago, the state of Georgia opened its first economic development office in Tokyo. At the same time, great Japanese companies like YKK started to come to Georgia. Since then, our relations continued to grow. The state of Georgia helped the Japanese companies to invest, and our companies were proud to call Georgia home. As a result, we now have 640 Japanese-affiliated companies thriving in the Peach State, working with more than 36,000 Georgians. These companies continue to expand, as shown in the recent announcement of expansion of OFS based in Gwinnett and Carroll County. And the visit of Governor Deal to my country last year gave another momentum to our relationship. Today, Japan and Georgia are closer than ever. The Japanese community is proud to be part of the effort to make Georgia greater. And we are happy that this summer we will have a new state charter school with a dual immersion program in English and in Japanese for Georgian children. We look forward to working and thriving together with all other communities. Thank you again for this honor, and thank you for your continued support. I look forward to many more years of prosperity and friendship between Japan and Georgia. To conclude, let me wish to the great state of Georgia much more success, much more development, and much more opportunities. Thank you.
Mr. President,
That's great.
Mr. President, also I'm remiss for not mentioning our good friends, the senators from the 51st and 53rd who've joined us here today. Thank you. I'll give them a big hand as well. Thank you.
Right, right. We have another special group we'd like to recognize. Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 645 by Senator James of the 35th and others, a resolution recognizing March 1st, 2018 as Lupus Advocacy Day at the State Capitol and for other purposes. Whereas lupus is an acute and chronic, lifelong autoimmune disease in which the immune system is unbalanced, causing inflammation and tissue damage to virtually every organ system in the body. And whereas in 2014, Governor Nathan Deal established the Georgia Council on Lupus Education and Advocacy to investigate the level of education and advocacy of lupus across the state. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the work of the Lupus Foundation of America and other organizations devoted to finding a cure for lupus and to supporting the individuals and families whose lives are affected by this autoimmune disease, and recognize March 1st, 2018 as Lupus Advocacy Day at the State Capitol. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair is none. The resolution is adopted. To speak to the resolution and recognize our special guest, I call upon the distinguished senator from 35th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm proud today to be a part of the Lupus Awareness Advocacy Day here at the State Capitol, and we have many advocates with us and many who are in this Senate chamber who serve with me, and many are standing with me right now. So without further ado, I would like for the few advocates who are leaders and the doctor to just say a couple of words for about 2 minutes and introduce themselves. But before they do, we have many people who are wearing purple up in the gallery and some outside. So please stand and be recognized and get a warm Senate welcome. Thank you. I hope that one day we can find a cure to this dread illness. Thank you for being here, and I'd like for the president to come up first. They have a short window.
Thank you, Senator James. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Cagle. My name is Chris Reed. I'm Advocacy Co-Chair as well as Chair of the Georgia Council on Lupus Education and Awareness, and I thank you for participating in Lupus Awareness Day today. I am going to introduce Dr. Kelly Rouster Stevens. She has 15 years of practice experience from a University of Cincinnati School of Medicine, as well as at a residency at Wake Forest University. She currently works at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta as a pediatric rheumatologist, and also a professor at the Emory University School of Medicine. So join me in welcoming Dr. Kelly Rouster Stevens.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Senator James, for allowing me to take a couple minutes to speak to you about my passion, pediatric lupus. Many people don't recognize that 20% of patients with lupus are diagnosed before their 18th birthday. We care for approximately 200 patients with lupus at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. Sadly, pediatric lupus has poor outcomes compared to adult lupus. We need to do a better job taking care of these children and educating people about lupus. One of the challenges we face is getting these patients into our clinic. Most of our patients are diagnosed during a hospitalization. We need to do a better job of recognizing lupus and finding a way to get children into our clinics. Overall, children face challenges different than adults. One of the biggest challenges is lupus can affect brain function. This is at a time where they're trying to learn, and they have challenges learning because of lupus. Not to mention the many medications that they have to take. The number one reason that a teenager with lupus ends up in the hospital is they're not taking their medicine because the side effects are not fun. So we need to do a better job educating our practitioners and our families and getting access for these children. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to present Senate Resolution 645 to the person who had come to me for many years and asked me to sponsor this on the Senate side. And she was not an elected official on that, but now she is. And now she's a state representative, first time this year. Representative Kim Schofield, I am honored to present to you this official resolution that was passed in this body. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator James, Lieutenant Governor, and all of the senators that have worked tirelessly to make sure lupus is on the forefront. We established the Georgia Council of Lupus Education and Awareness, and we will continue to fight. Thank you for standing with us, and thank you to all the advocates that came. God bless you.
Let's do a picture down on the steps, okay? Wonderful. Thank you so much. Secretary will read another resolution as we prepare to honor another group.
Senate Resolution 786 by Senator Kirk of the 13th and others, a resolution commending the Georgia Rural Health Association and recognizing March 1st, 2018 as Rural Health Day at the state capitol and for other purposes. Whereas the Georgia Rural Health Association is a nonprofit advocate for rural health care consumers and the dedicated healthcare professionals who serve rural Georgia and encourages the development of an improved healthcare system throughout the state. And whereas Georgia has 109 rural counties encompassing more than 2 million residents, with a continuing decline in the availability and quality of healthcare providers, specialists, nurses, and professional services. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the efforts of the Georgia Rural Health Association and recognize March 1st, 2018 as Rural Health Day at the state capitol. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair is none. The resolution is adopted. It's now my honor to recognize the distinguished senator from the 13th to speak to the resolution and recognize our special guests.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, we know a lot about health care. It's very important to all of us. And, you know, I remember when Atlanta was reaching to meet that 1 million mark to have a population of 1 million. Now, we're way past that. But health care here was a lot different then than it is today. And rural health care is a lot different as well. So today we want to recognize the Georgia Rural Health Care Association. And this is pretty historic for Georgia. GRHA is the oldest state rural health association in the country. It was founded in 1981. Georgia led the nation in the development of rural advocacy network representation for the entire continuum of care. GRHA is a nonprofit network of health care providers, educators, and individuals united in its commitment to improve health and health care services for rural Georgians. And they do a lot of neat things. They've got clinics in schools. They have dental clinics in some. They got mental health services in others. So they kind of try to encompass the whole spectrum of health care. So I have with us today Shelley Spires, the past president, and Carla Belcher, secretary, and Matt Caseman, a board member. And Shelley's going to come and speak.
Good morning. My name is Shelley Spires, and I'm from Albany, Georgia. Thank you for your support for the Georgia Rural Health Association and this continuing resolution. We certainly appreciate your ability to look and see what we do in the rural areas and how we provide services to our rural communities. We also would like to give out a special thanks to Senator Utterman, Senator Burke, and Senator Kirk for supporting us with this, as well as the rest of the Senate Council. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all. Y'all just wait just a second. We'll get some pictures.
We have another special guest we'd like to recognize. Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 605 by Senator Thompson, the 14th, and others, a resolution recognizing and commending Trevor Lawrence of Cartersville, Georgia, and for other purposes. Whereas Trevor Lawrence, a resident and native of Cartersville, Georgia, recently finished his senior season as quarterback for the Cartersville High School Purple Hurricanes, where he led the team to 2 4A state championship victories with an overall record of 52-2, and during which time he spearheaded a record 41-game winning streak. Whereas Trevor's success on the field is evidence of his outstanding character and moral fortitude, throughout his career he has represented his team in the greater Cartersville community on a national level with poise and maturity far beyond his years. His athletic ability is complemented by his intelligence in the classroom and leadership both on and off the field. And whereas during his high school career he threw for 13,908 yards and 161 touchdowns, now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize Trevor Lawrence for his unprecedented athletic achievements and give their best wishes as Trevor continues his athletic and academic journey at Clemson University. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair is none. The resolution is adopted. We have obviously been able to recognize Cartersville and all the wonderful work that they do, both in the classroom but also in their national not national championship, but state championships. And Trevor, sadly enough, has decided to go to Clemson, so he'll never get to see a national championship. But what a wonderful, wonderful individual, and we wish him the very, very best. To recognize our special guest and to speak to the resolution, it's now my honor to call upon the Senator from the 14th.
Thanks, Governor. If he's heard it once, he's heard it 100 times, so he's used to hearing about it already. Ladies and gentlemen, it truly is an honor. I'd like to just read something because this morning I was trying to think about exactly how I might characterize the time that Trevor and his family, the investment they've spent in Bartow County and Cartersville, how I'd characterize that for you. And I thought the best way is just to put it into words. So if you'll indulge me and just listen for a second. Georgia's very blessed to have amazing athletes each and every year. Some of these athletes rise to fame, but become distracted and ultimately fizzle. Others, such as Ronnie Brown and Vic Beasley, both left Cartersville and Bartow County to become great NFL players. Trevor has given Cartersville, Bartow County, and all Georgians tremendous joy over the past several years, but his success did not happen by accident. First, it's his parents. Jeremy and Amanda raised their children in church at Tabernacle Baptist, pastored by Don Hadaway. They instilled a strong work ethic, understanding nothing comes easy. You get what you work for. And second of all, and most important, family comes first. That's followed by a coach, Joey King, who's on stage, who pours into each of his kids and his players at every opportunity he can, not because they're players, but because they're under his tutelage. He pushes hard, but with a godly, soft hand and heart. Then, Trevor. Trevor, your humble heart, tremendous drive, and incredible God-gifted talent helped you achieve greatness. Luke 12:48, much is given, much is expected. Ephesians 4:2, be completely humble and gentle, patient, bearing with one another, love. In closing, Trevor, you're very special, but it's not just because of your talent. It's because you're humble, and that spirit will give all of us the opportunity to continue to watch you do incredible things at Clemson, and I'm confident one day in the NFL. Ladies and gentlemen, if we can, let's please let Trevor and his family know how much we appreciate what he's done in Bartow County, in Cartersville, and for the state of Georgia, as we have him step up here and I provide him with this proclamation from the governor as well as a privileged resolution.
I just want to thank y'all for doing what y'all do, and thanks for having me today. I appreciate it. So.
I want to thank Mr. President, Senator Thompson, for taking time out. I know you guys are extremely busy. Appreciate everything that you do. But just a note about Trevor, he's been the #1 player in the country, the U.S. Army, #1 player, National Player of the Year, this and that. And we're getting ready to do National Signing Day. I've got about 15, 20 different media outlets calling, wanting to know if they can come and video and do all this and that. I said, I'm clearly going to put the ball in Trevor's court, so I called it and asked Trevor, what he wanted. And his response was, Coach, I'd just rather the local paper be there. So a lot of guys with this clout and the attention that comes with being the #1 player in the country handle it a lot different. So he's a great young man. He's got strong roots, and he's going to continue to make this state proud. Thank you so much for taking time to honor us.
Let's pose for a picture.
Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 724 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others, a resolution commending the Georgia Swarm Pro Lacrosse team on becoming the 2017 National Lacrosse League World Champions and for other purposes. Whereas the Georgia Swarm Pro Lacrosse team has established and maintained a proud tradition of excellence and has completed another triumphant season of lacrosse competition by posting an outstanding record of 17 wins and only 5 losses. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the Georgia Swarm Pro Lacrosse team on becoming the 2017 National Lacrosse League World Champions and extend their most sincere best wishes for continued success. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair is none. The resolution is adopted. It is my honor now to call upon the distinguished senator from the 9th to recognize our special guest and speak to the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I'm pleased today to bring forward this resolution to honor the Georgia Swarm Pro lacrosse team, which is located in Gwinnett County. They play at the Infinite Energy Arena. They're a member of the National Lacrosse League, the NLL, which is North America's professional indoor lacrosse league featuring the best players in the world. And as we said, they are the 2017 world champions in that league. The Swarm, they compete in an 18-game regular season schedule that runs from December to April, and they play their home games in Gwinnett County, as I said. They're currently in the midst of their season, which is not why we're here today. We're here to celebrate 2017. However, I'm being told that if they win this Friday night, they're back in first place, so they are on track to hopefully repeat as champions this year, and we hope they do that. Last year, to recap, they swept the Toronto Rock 2-0 in the East Division Finals before dethroning the two-time defending champions Saskatchewan Rush in a 2-0 sweep during the best-of-3 Champions Cup Finals. And they won that Champions Cup Final in front of 15,000 fans in overtime. So it is my honor today to congratulate them and to present, and I'll go ahead and introduce the people here up on the podium with me today. We have Andy Orlata, who's here. We have head coach Ed Como, Dan Ladisor. We have top scorer Shane Jackson, and we have Jordan McIntosh, and he will speak to the resolution.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having us this morning. It's a tremendous honor to be here. I know, our team moved to Georgia 3 years ago from Minnesota, and I can tell you from day one, being here in Georgia, it's been a tremendous experience for us. The fans, the community have really rallied around our team out in Gwinnett County, and we're really, really proud to bring Atlanta a world championship. Hopefully one that will kind of spark a lot more professional championships here in the state of Georgia. So we're excited to be here. We're excited to hopefully bring another one this year, and thanks again for having us today.
Awesome. Well done, man. Well done. Y'all come on down. Let's do a picture with y'all. I'm going to grab the Awesome. Yeah, no, it's a pleasure, man. Let me get that down. Eddie, we'll just put this down front there. Yeah. Are there any unanimous consents? Any senator wishing to rise on a point of personal privilege? Any motion? Chair recognizes Senator from the 45th. You recognize this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We're delighted to have a group here, and I believe they're in the gallery. And we are celebrating 40 years, a milestone of the Partnership Against Domestic Violence. This is an all-volunteer nonprofit that was started in 1977, and it was based here in Atlanta. Fortunately, it expanded, and it serves not only Fulton County, but it also serves Gwinnett County. It offers 24-hour service for victims of domestic violence. The most important thing when I go to these shelters and I see what they do is they not only take care of the victim of domestic violence, but they also take care of the children. And often these are very young children that come with them. They also offer 24-hour crisis lines. They offer parenting services. They offer psychological services for survivors. And one very important thing they do, they offer supportive housing for women who have been victims of domestic violence. An amazing statistics is that 1 in 4 women in their lifetime may be affected by domestic violence. So that means out of the 56 senators in here and the women that are senators, 1 in 4 could potentially be a victim or have already been a victim. We're delighted to have them here. If they're here in the gallery, you want to stand up? There they are. We're delighted to have y'all here at your state capitol. It's not our state capitol, it's your state capitol. We're delighted that you're having your 40-year anniversary, and we appreciate it very much. I yield the well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Any motions to withdraw or commit? Ready to, we have a consent calendar of privilege resolutions that are before you. Is there objection? Without objection, the consent calendar of privilege resolutions are therefore adopted. Senator from the 15th, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 5th.
Without objection, senator from the 5th will be excused. We already did that. So, no, engross. Chair recognizes senator from the 46th, the majority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that House Bill 918, the supplemental budget, be engrossed.
Read the caption. Moving for engrossment. Yeah, I need to correct their
Came out of finance.
Hold on.
House Bill 918 by Representative Stration of the 104th and others, a bill will be titled Enactment Title 48 of the CGA relating to revenue and taxation so as to define the terms Internal Revenue Code and Internal Revenue Code of 1986 and thereby incorporate certain provisions of the federal law into Georgia law and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Senator has moved for engrossment. There is objection by the senator from the 41st. All senators in favor of engrossment will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the motion for engrossment, the yeas are 34, the nays are 15, and this bill has now been engrossed. Secretary will read the first bill of the day, which will be House Bill 273.
House Bill 273 by Representative Douglas the 78th and others. The bill will be titled Enactment Part 15 of Article 6 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to miscellaneous provisions under the Quality Basic Education Act so as to provide for a daily recess for students in kindergarten grades 1 through 5 and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Education and Youth offers the following substitute House Bill 273, a bill with title Enactment Part 15 of Article 6 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to miscellaneous provisions under the Quality Basic Education Act so as to provide for recess for students in kindergarten and grades 1 through 5 and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 53rd to present the bill.
Mr. President, I have a great bill for our members today. Representative Demerick Douglas chose me to do this bill. You know, Representative Douglas is a physical fit guy, played football for the University of Georgia, and he chose me because we have the same physique, because we believe in the same physical fitness out there. Okay, it could be a stretch. Mr. President, I'd like to say that recess is an incredible, important part of our children's education. We know math and science and reading is essential, but also we're talking about kids, children, and they need recess. Because, Mr. President, I would say to you, if they don't have recess, they may look like this later on. Very important to have recess for our children. I can just think some of our colleagues when they were younger, like the senator from the 1st and the 11th, who probably played doctor on playground with their little medical kit. I can imagine the senator from the 30th and the 33rd playing with their little toy soldiers on the playground. I can even imagine the senator from the 50th and the 8th playing with the little farm animals, wishing one day they were going to be doing farming or teaching. Mr. President, I can even think of the senator from the 49th or the 10th playing with their Hot Wheels on the playground, an essential part of their education process. Mr. President, I can even see the senator from the 20th reading an important insurance policy on the playground as he prepares for his future. And of course, Mr. President, I can see the senator from the 25th throwing football with his buddy Kirby Smart and other children back then. And let me not forget my good friend from the 7th, probably playing with his dolls on the playground. So, and I'm sad that he's not in this room to experience that with the rest of us. Mr. President, it's important that we ensure that young children not only are taught reading, writing, arithmetic, you can tell how old I am, mathematics and science, but we also need to make sure they know my good friend Alan Powell and his experience with being a physical fit guy. But it is essential. So please vote for House Bill 273 by the committee substitute that allows recess in elementary schools from kindergarten to the 5th grade. Mr. President, I would love to answer questions because I imagine there are a few here.
You do have a few. Chair recognizes Senator from the 42nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentleman yield?
I'd be honored.
Mr. Chairman, isn't it true that I ran around and I beat up all the boys on the playground when I was in elementary school?
I bet that is true, Senator.
Thank you. I figured you would recognize the truth in that statement. But on a more serious note, Mr. Chairman, isn't it also true that all the research shows and the experience of parents show that it's not just the physically fit aspect of recess that makes it important? Kids actually learn a lot better in their academic subjects when they've been able to run around, work off the willies, get their blood flowing, and then it's much easier for them to focus. And taking recess away ends up being counterproductive because they can't sit still, and they need to move around. They're growing beings.
Yes, I would agree with that, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your leadership on this issue. Senator from the 45th.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 50.
Oh.
First of all, hold on. Even though the senator's in the well, we have a special group up in the gallery that actually has the mom of the senator from the 49th that's with us, and she's going to have so many jewels in her crown when she gets to heaven.
Amen.
Raising the senator from the 49th. Y'all please stand as we recognize you. Thank you very, very much. A real honor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I was on the road, Mr. President.
I know. Sorry to interrupt. Chair recognizes Senator from the 56th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the Senator yield?
Certainly, Senator.
Senator, isn't it true the Senator from the 51st, the distinguished majority whip, was out on that playground too with 2 green bean cans and a string and some washers with the future of playground broadband at that time, Senator?
Yes. Correct, very correct. Good one, good one. I've already given you a plug. You were not in the room, and your mother's here. I'm telling Mrs. Miller, do something.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 45th for a question.
Would the powerful Rules Chairman yield for a question,
Only powerful
please?
because of my friendship with you and others, yes.
Mr. Chairman, is it not true that almost every day you give me a Snickers bar and that contributes to my obesity? Is that not true?
Senator, I thought that was just between you and I. Because I know your secret. Is that all I have? Please help make the children of Georgia smarter by giving them recess. Thank you, Mr. President.
I could go a lot of places, but I'm just going to ask, is the questions on the adoption of the committee substitute? Is there objection? Without objection, committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agree on report of committee which fail pass the bill? Chairs none, report of committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Any objection? Chairs none, main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Question on the pass the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 0. And this bill obviously erects constitutional majority is therefore adopted. Secretary will read House Bill 918.
House Bill 918 by Representative Administration 104th and others. The bill will be titled Enactment, Title 48 of the CGA, relating revenue and taxation, so as to define the terms Internal Revenue Code and Internal Revenue Code of 1986, and thereby incorporate certain provisions of the federal law into Georgia law and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules offers the following substitute to House Bill 918. Bill to title Enactment, Title 48 of the CGA, relating revenue and taxation, so as to define the terms Internal Revenue Code and Internal Revenue Code of 1986, and thereby incorporate certain provisions of the federal law into Georgia law, to double the standard deduction amounts, to lower the personal and corporate income tax rates, to revise the provisions relating to the assignment of corporate income tax credits, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th to present the historic tax bill.
Good morning, colleagues. If you don't mind, if you'll indulge me for a second, I'm a father, and I think job number one of a father is to embarrass his daughter at every chance once she reaches the age of 12 and over. And it's my great honor today to have my daughter Charlotte paging for us in the chamber. Her and her 2 friends, Emily and Callie, are right here, and they're paging for us today. And thank you for lining that up just perfect. We didn't even plan that out. Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. Today we stand on the threshold of history. HB 918 is the largest income tax cut in state history. and will save Georgia taxpayers over $5 billion over the next 5 years. I'm proud to tell you that this bill will keep more hard-earned dollars in the wallets of Georgians by eliminating the so-called windfall that Georgia would receive following the passage of the Federal Tax Cut and Jobs Act in December of 2017. It is the right thing to pass this windfall back to Georgia constituents, and I'm proud to have the opportunity to do so along with you. In order to accomplish this in a fiscally conservative way, we first doubled the standard deduction for all Georgia taxpayers, modeling the federal law. Secondly, we will reduce the individual and corporate income tax rate from 6% to 5.75% beginning in tax year 2019. It will further be reduced to 5.5% beginning in tax year 2020, subject to a joint resolution of the General Assembly and a signature of the governor. Now, what does all this mean for families all across Georgia? Why is this a good deal for Georgians? A family of 4 with a $50,000 family income, household income, under this plan receives a 16% state tax cut. A family of 4 with a $75,000 household income would receive a 12.5% income tax cut. And a family of 4 with a $150,000 household income will receive a 10% tax cut. As you can see, these tax cuts will benefit our lower and middle class families, which is one of the many reasons that this is a great deal for the taxpayers and constituents in the state of Georgia. In addition, HB 918 contains the IRC update language for 2017 and 2018. This allows Georgians to file their state income tax returns and brings us into compliance. And I know Commissioner Riley is ready to get to work processing these tax returns for our constituents and our residents here in Georgia. This is the first cut to the individual income tax since 1937. This is the first cut to the corporate income tax since 1969. As I said earlier, this bill is historic. We have the opportunity today to fulfill our promises to our constituents to lessen the burden of government in the form of a tax cut. I hope you will let our constituents know a deal's a deal, and we will join me and vote yay for HB 918. If there are any questions, I'll take them now. If there are none, I will yield the well.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 29th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I will yield.
And Senator, obviously you have well covered the historic nature of this proposal, and I'm very grateful for your leadership. I did have a question with regard to Part 2, Section 2.1. It's lines 270, I believe, to 305. It appears to be making some alterations to the TAVT provision of our tax code, and I was just wondering if you could get us a little more information on that provision.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I'll answer that. There's the Commissioner, the Department of Revenue handles the titles for vehicles in the state of Georgia. There was some confusion in the code what happens when there's a lost title. So this simply clarifies that if there is a lost title, that the person who's lost the title, they don't owe that TAVT tax. That tax is only due upon the sale or purchase of a vehicle.
Thank you, Senator.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 56th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I will yield.
Senator, I know yesterday was a very long day, and some of our friends in North-South Georgia need to get back home, so I don't want to ask you too many questions. But if I could, you mentioned earlier about how this is truly a middle and even lower income tax credit, and they would be the highest percentage. Isn't it true, based on this, for our Georgia families, that this tax break, this historic tax break, will give them the opportunity to perhaps buy their first home or get a new car or take that coveted family vacation and make life memories because of this very tax cut that you are proposing to us today?
Yes, Senator, that's correct. This is going to allow Georgians to have more autonomy to do what they want to do with what I believe is their money. So we're making sure that they have that opportunity, and if they need that to help with a down payment on a vehicle or a down payment on a house or a vacation, then I'm glad for them to have the ability to make that decision.
And Senator, will you yield for one final question?
I will yield.
Isn't it true when our hardworking Georgia families take this money and they put it back in the economy, it will in fact create more jobs and more opportunities for other people as they spend some of their hard-earned money out in their communities?
I think you're exactly right on, Senator from the 56th. You know, we didn't take all these cuts at one time. We measured these, we took these one step at a time, and that's going to allow the economic impact of these tax cuts to build and therefore lead to hopefully the ability to continue to cut. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 41st for a question.
Senator, yield.
I will yield.
Senator, in the initial bill, HB 918, there was a tax cut regarding Delta Airlines or airline motor fuel taxes. Is that correct?
There was. That's not included in this bill we're discussing today.
Thank you.
And I'm not yielding for questions with regards to that tax cut, just what's here today.
So you're not
I'm
going
yielding
to yield
for questions regarding what we have in front of us.
So you,
I will
Senator,
yield to you, though. Go ahead.
Thank you. So the senator does not want to reply on whether or not that tax credit had any merit, created jobs, or not?
This is what I'll say. I will answer your question. After working yesterday and working with many, many people in this building, the governor is in full support of the bill that's in front of us. He supports these tax cuts. You know, he had a press conference yesterday, and I believe he expressed his views on where we're at with the other tax cuts that you were mentioning, and I believe that press conference speaks for itself. But what I know is that he believes in these tax cuts. He believes it's the right thing to do. I believe he campaigned on lowering the tax burdens in Georgia when he first ran for governor, and he's fulfilling that promise with this bill when he signs this into law. And he has agreed that if this passes both houses, that he will indeed do that. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well. I ask for your favorable consideration.
Chair now recognizes Senator from the 41st to speak to the bill.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on this important bill. You know, there's no other duty probably that has as much weight or importance as that when we offer through the force of state to tax somebody or take money that they've earned or saved or had and then take that to create a better environment and world and state for all of us. We do that through taxation, and we take that all, each and every one of us, very, very seriously. This bill offers some monies back to citizens of Georgia. That, of course, is something that we all find attractive, and we all want to look at carefully to see whether or not we're making the right policy decisions for Georgia. You know, we are fortunate, actually, to be in a place where changes in the federal tax law afford us as Georgia legislators to maybe have what you might call a windfall to discuss and to work with to better the lives of people in Georgia, to possibly do what we all like to do, let them keep more money in their pocket. But today I rise opposing this bill because I think it is not the best policy decision at this time and place for Georgia. You know, it is something, first of all, that has come on us rather quickly. When this session started, for the first 2 or 3 weeks, there were talks that this might be actually a hurt to our state budget, that we might lose $200 or $300 million. Following that, there was a study done that we might get $780 million a year, then another study that might be $980 million a year, and another one, $1.04 billion. The point of that is we do not know exactly what the financial benefits or effect to our state will be until we see people start to file their federal taxes and how they adjust to the changes of the federal tax law. Therefore, we must be careful. The author of this bill and others will say we do have the phase in of next year with another step that has to be done with the joint resolution. But I will maintain to you that we should be cautious before we go down this road. Now, first of all, Georgia citizens will hear that you're cutting income taxes and feel all of a sudden excited that their taxes are being cut and they will have a win. Well, ladies and gentlemen, too often this General Assembly has made the decision to cut taxes here through either special breaks or general taxes, but yet shift the burden on the local governments. And their taxes really haven't gone down, although we've taken credit for it. We have seen that time and time again in public education, where we have cut the state share that goes to public education for more than 60% of the funding, to reverse that where almost 60% comes to local. What does that mean? Yes, they pay some less state taxes, but then they pay more property taxes. So by us not taking some of this money and doing what we should do, which is fund the transportation cuts that we have taken from local schools, fund the health insurance that we've not funded for cafeteria workers and bus drivers and taking that money away, taking the austerity cuts out of education, by both parties agree at least $167 million. I actually feel it's much more. That remains in public education. By not funding that, we're shifting burdens onto the property taxpayers. We also have seen through the years that we have cut our funding, or the portion of state funding, for roads and maintenance and other areas of our state. So local governments now have to pay higher sales tax. In my county, years ago, it was 4-cent sales tax. I think one of them was local. We're up to like 7 cents. That's because we continue to do things like this, not looking at the holistic approach, but doing a state tax cut and shoving the burden on the local governments. So I caution Georgia citizens, because while we do this cut, we're also going to see local areas trying to raise money for transit and other initiatives the state should be involved in, and it won't be as good a tax cut as you might believe. And one issue with that, as we move away from a progressive tax like income tax and move to more regressive taxation like sales tax and property tax, you will see an economic burden on poorer families in Georgia. You know, one reason Georgia has one of the highest infant mortality rates in this country is because of our tax structure becoming more burden on the poorer Georgians. You know, some money that I would like to see, and that some members of my caucus would like to see, would be an earned income tax credit, like over 20 states have, that would help the poorest families in Georgia with the tax break and allow them to move out of poverty quicker and better, and it would create better health in their children. A 10% earned income tax credit would result in an 8.4% decline in Georgia infants born with low birth rate. That would have a tremendous effect on Georgians, but we're not doing that here today. Instead, we're rushing to do this comprehensive tax plan that I think is in many ways short-sighted. Now, one element of the plan, doubling of Georgia's standard deduction, $559 million or so, is I think something that we all could have embraced, because it is something that it goes around to all Georgians. But with that, we could have coupled an earned income tax credit to help the poor, and we could have fully funded the austerity cuts to the K through 12 program, our education program for our students. You know, when we look at our decisions here today, I think we're going to feel that we missed a true opportunity, an opportunity to work on our infrastructure, the health of our children, the education for our future generations. And we are also putting a tremendous burden, should these revenues not come in line with the projections that we have. And again, those projections have changed over 4 times since this session started. A burden on the next General Assembly to try to fill those holes. And as we see, we continue to try to fill those holes in a more regressive tax methodology. And that's just not right for Georgia. It doesn't, as one senator says, put as much money on the table to stimulate the economy. You know, if you cut to the most needy people their taxes or the lower income, that money, the velocity of that money of turning around the economy will be faster, more energetic, and have more impact than if you cut taxes on the very wealthy. So again, Mr. President, I want you to know that I come down here today. I applaud our governor for many things. In the budget, he's put money in our pension programs for our teachers. In this tax plan, it's not totally so one-sided. I think the Senator 52nd had some impact to try to moderate tax cuts and try to bring some progressivity to it. But in honesty, I can't vote for it because it doesn't really go to what we need to be doing in Georgia. We need to make sure we take care of our education system, and we haven't done that. We need to make sure that we really take care of our pension programs, and we haven't done that. And if any of you here haven't heard me 3 or 4 times this session get up and tell you that it's wrong what we've done to hardworking state employees by not giving them a raise, how can we find this kind of money from our constituents, and we care deeply that we know that they would like as much as they can in their pocket, but they understand our teachers need raises. And we're taking this money, we're not even considering giving a 1 or 2% raise to teachers, or 1 or 2% raise to state employees. You know, we've come in a couple times and given massive 20% raises to some state employees that carry guns, but so many have been left behind. I think I challenge you all to vote this down, to consider that fact that we can do better. I definitely want to help Georgians too, and as I say, doubling the Georgia standard deduction is something I could support. But we also need to address the other needs of Georgians, and we need to be far-sighted, not short-sighted. Mr. President, I will yield for any questions that I may have. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 50th for a question.
Will Senator yield?
I yield.
Senator, I've tried to listen closely to you. You and I share an interest in education, and you have a lot more institutional knowledge than I do. I'm just trying to be a lifelong learner. But based on what I remember, I think the QBE that you referred to was passed unanimously by the legislature in 1985. I believe it became effective July the 1st, 1986. My question to you is, how many years since that time in 1986 has it been fully funded?
That is an issue of some debate. I would probably argue it's never been fully funded. But beyond, so that's a problem. But beyond that statement that it hadn't been fully funded, in the last 10 years, I have seen us take so much money from educational system that is not in the QBE funding formula. For instance, the money I talked about bus drivers earlier and their health care wasn't part of the funding formula. We have also cut back in other ways that go to our local school systems that are outside the QBE funding formula that has increased the problems our local school systems have faced. But I appreciate you bringing that up, that we really need to address that.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 42nd for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I yield.
Senator, I'm looking at some data here, and it looks to me, isn't it true, that the top 1% would see a hugely disproportionate share of the benefits under this legislation?
It is true that this does benefit the top 1%, probably. Whenever you talk about income tax, usually that's a progressive tax form. Cutting that, you know, probably does help the wealthier more than the lower income people. That's why I think we should balance it out with the earned income tax credit and other methodology.
The data I'm looking at shows a $37 savings for folks that make 100 grand to 225 grand on average, $54 for those that make 225 grand to 500, starting to get very affluent, but then almost 2,500 on average for those in the top 1%.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you bringing that forward. Yeah, and you know, at any income level, if you get $47 in your pocket, you feel like you've got a winner. But what people don't often think of and see is the fact that later on, they may have to pay down the line. What do I mean by that? Well, the federal government, because of their tax changes, have a tremendous deficit. And we may see cuts to the state as far as how they can fund health care and other issues. So that person might get $47 this year, but he might also, or she might also, find that they have to pay more for their health care, more for other costs, et cetera. But yes, I agree with it.
Isn't it true, Senator, that no one's able to buy a house, as was suggested earlier, on $37 a month, and that those who are getting $2,000 a month already make over $500K and can already afford a house?
It is true that those people that are getting that $37 are going to need that to buy food very badly. That's true.
Senator, isn't it also true that we've recently, in addition to some of the other categories you mentioned, given fairly significant salary bumps to the constitutional officers?
That is correct. While we have not given pay raises to state employees to amount to enough to cover inflational costs, we are looking at giving constitutional officers a substantial raise.
Senator, if you'll yield for one or two more questions.
I will.
Isn't it true with some of this money, instead of causing a deficit in our own budget, we could move ahead with the tuition-free technical college?
Absolutely.
In part, it was just with part of that money.
Just part of the money would pay for tuition-free technical college for all Georgians.
And isn't it true that under the Governor's Complete College Georgia program, we're projecting a massive need to have many more Georgians coming out of high school get some form of post-secondary education?
I applaud the governor for considering that issue. It is certainly, I think, a bipartisan acknowledgement that we need to improve our workforce, and our technical colleges need to have their needs addressed.
Isn't it true, Senator, that it's much more difficult to do that and to expand transit and do all these other good things that we discuss when we're not giving ourselves any money to do it with?
The lady knows of what she speaks. You know, we all set different priorities. We might have 56. But my point in this is that we are certainly not even coming in the middle of trying to address the combined needs of Georgians. These tax cuts are short-sighted. I also want to mention to you, too, popped in my mind when she was talking, is another concern, Mr. President, I have is that with these federal tax cuts and the massive federal deficit that they will be bringing us, we may see significant costs shifted to Georgia, and we probably should wait and evaluate those costs before we make quite such a drastic tax change. So I think we could do better. I appreciate the work that the author and the senator from the 9th has brought before us.
Chair recognizes Senator from 36 for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
I yield.
Senator, I clearly am in agreement with the points that you have made. I think all of us, isn't it true, should take a much more measured approach to revision of the tax code in such a drastic way. Isn't it true that this bill that is before us not only seeks to address any windfall that might occur from the federal tax code change in Washington, but am I to understand, and isn't it true that it's another $1.3 billion over the next few years that are cuts that are not addressing the windfall? It's just, let's just throw another $1.3 billion. Let's just slash our state budget. Let's slash the revenues for the state by 1.3 billion. Isn't that objectively what this tax bill does?
That certainly is a concern, that projections from Georgia Public Policy Institute and the state budget office is that we're actually making cuts that may exceed what the windfall is, and therefore, cutting other services that we may need in the future. We know the waiting lists for people that need hospice care or nursing home care. We know there are tremendous needs in Georgia that we need to look at, and that Georgians would value us considering, I think, even though this is their hard-earned tax money, that we take care of those least among us, and we make sure we prepare our children for the future.
Are you familiar, Senator, with the difference in Georgia and other states on what we invest in funding the arts?
The senator from the 36 is an expert on that, and I would allow you to educate me, but I know that Georgia lags far behind other states in the arts. I will say this, the arts lead to creativity and help people in other areas of life, but there are numerous areas that we could address if we had time to talk about it. I will also say this, I don't know about the House party leadership, but I don't believe this is something that was done in a bipartisan manner. I wasn't included in any discussions except for the input I was able to, occasionally give the senator from the 4th.
Thank you. We still don't have a remedy, do we, for all the hospitals that continue to close down in rural Georgia?
Thank you. Senator, as you realize and know, recently there was an evaluation of Georgia, and we actually dropped our quality life standing. The main reason was when they evaluated health care access and health care quality in Georgia, that it was declining. So that is certainly an area that we need to be concerned with, and especially in rural Georgia, where the hospitals are needed to attract other industry and as an economic development hub.
So it's true, isn't it, that our needs are many. We are still pulling out of a recession that was statewide, nationwide, and worldwide, and we experienced cuts and trimming across our agencies, across our ability to deliver services as a state to our citizens, and there's money that's really desperately needed in area after area. I didn't share, but we fund arts at 11 cents per person in Georgia a year.
No,
Minnesota funds, isn't it true, $17 a year in arts? That's just investing in that particular piece of the economy that helps ensure a quality of life for our citizens. Isn't it true?
That's true.
And our federally qualified community health centers. Now, they didn't ask me, isn't it true, to say this at all, so I don't want to use their name in vain, but we could be funding those much more robustly, isn't it true, and bringing more services into rural and small town Georgia across the state for our citizens.
The senator is well informed on the health care issues of this state and knows of which she speaks.
Thank you. Just finally, to meet the needs of our transportation, our transit, our infrastructure, our building out broadband, fully funding our public schools, access to college, means-based scholarships. There's such a myriad of needs that we have that, Senator, isn't it true? I fear that this is a quick grab to go home and say we cut taxes, but the real story is we haven't fully funded the services that we should be providing to our citizens.
Certainly it is a concern of yourself and others that we need to make sure that we make that consideration and try to address it at this time.
Thank you, Senator.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 13th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would Senator yield for a couple of questions or a few questions?
I will.
Thank you. Isn't it true you mentioned state employees not getting a raise and teachers not getting a raise? Isn't it true that state employees and teachers file state income taxes?
It is true that there will be an effect here, but let me remind you that not keeping up with inflation for more than a decade is not going to be made up for $57 or $157 a year, number one. Number two, not only have they seen a cost as their income has dropped, we have shifted a large portion of state health care costs onto both groups. Number three, we have seriously impacted and cut the pension program for state employees. One time when I was first elected, being a state employee meant a lot because you had a decent pension. We have cut from 2% a year to 1% a year on pensions. And you work 30 years, you get 30% of your salary. I think as stewards of this state dollars and as representatives of the people of the state, we can do more and do better for teachers and state employees, and they would like that. But it is true that they will see, if you're, and there's a lot of state employees that make less than $48,000 a year. Her $48,000 a year example, $47, they will see some benefit, yes.
Double deductions too. Isn't it true also that, I know you're married, and isn't it true that maybe you or your wife like to shop, maybe both of you do, and isn't it true that you enjoy shopping more when you got more money in your account to spend? Is that true?
That's true, Senator, but let me remind you, as the state continues to drop the share that we have paid to higher education, we used to do 2/3 of higher education costs, Georgia, those people like me that have children are paying more for higher education. Some are even sending their kids to private school because we've got classrooms so crowded, so it's coming out of the pocket somewhere else. And number two, as we've shipped costs to local governments, although, yes, I like having more money in my pocket to shop, I am paying tremendously more in sales tax because we have shifted a burden to local governments to pick up. So every time I shop, I'm reminded that this state institution continues to seek a tax methodology which is not progressive, it is very regressive.
So isn't it also true that when you do more shopping and spend more money, that gives us a more robust economy, which also which also brings in more taxes?
Luckily, I got a degree in economics, so I'll tell you this. If I give a tax break to somebody making $80,000 a year, and they have to spend every cent of what I give them, and it goes in the economy, the velocity of that money will be faster than if I give it to somebody who makes $240,000 a year, and 70% of that goes into savings. That money in savings turns over too, but the velocity is less. So I will say this, if we make sure we have a balanced tax plan that includes progressivity and we help out the lower income people to a certain, at this stage in our structure, that money will actually turn over and get our economy up and running again even faster. So I think you're agreeing with me in a roundabout way.
Thank you, Senator. And last question, since you have a degree in economics, isn't it true that working class tax-paying Georgians know better how to spend their money than you and I do?
And they would certainly appreciate the money that they get in this tax break, and I know that you mean that with all your heart, that you're trying to help the citizens of Georgia, but from my standpoint and my belief is that they also want a quality public education system. They do want to have parks and a high quality of life. They are concerned about the arts. And maybe most importantly, they're worried about health care for their children and for our elderly in our states. And we have a failing or certainly troubled system that we could help a lot if we gave some attention to it with some of these funds.
No further questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair now recognizes the distinguished Finance Chairman, Senator from the 52nd, to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'm really happy to be up here on this historic day. We know that things don't happen in a silo, that there's a lot of work that went into this to get to this point, from our governor and his leadership in bringing the strong growth to this state, the President of the Senate and his leadership in shepherding this tax cut through the body and presenting us with this time. You know, I came here 6 years ago. The budget, I believe then, was about $17 billion. Through the strong growth from this state, I've seen it rise to around $26 billion. I've seen billions more put into education. This year alone, we're putting hundreds of millions of dollars more into the retirement system for our teachers. The retirement system that had been dropped down low in the 70s is at 79.2%. With these hundreds of millions of dollars, it's going to be over 80% on the next projection. Every business out there will say if you're pension plan is 80% funded, you're in extremely good shape. You've got other states, Illinois, California, Kentucky. I think Kentucky's at 16% funded on their pension system. They have no hope of ever catching up again. My point is, we've got millions more for mental health. The state has done a great job of growing the economy under our leadership, of bringing us to this point. And now we've got a tax bill that goes back to last January, retroactive, and puts in $180 by doubling the standard deduction for every family in the state of Georgia, every income tax paying family in this state. As was mentioned by the senator that presented the bill here, we see that the biggest percentages go to the lower and the middle income classes, a lower percentage as your income increases. We've seen a tax cut that for the individuals here will be over $1.1 billion over this period, but it is directed with the larger benefits a little bit later on. We have to make sure the revenue's there. There's a trigger mechanism in there to say the revenue's there. This is a very conservative program that will reward the taxpayers here for their hard work. I do think that we have certainly made sure that every income tax group in this entire structure gets a tax cut. And again, the biggest percentages go to the middle income class, who will use this money to put it back into into our economy and see the rewards of the hard work that this state has done. And again, thank you for, especially the President of this Senate, for his leadership in making this day happen.
You do have one question. Chair recognizes Senator from the 40th.
Does the senator yield?
I'll yield.
Senator, isn't it true there's been a lot of rhetoric here, but I'm looking at the fiscal note, and it seems to me that if I look at this for the first 3 years, the effect is about $650 million more dollars of revenue for the first 3 years, and that's based just upon using the 5.75 the quarter reduction. Is that not true?
This is the biggest benefits are in later years on this. It will be over $1 billion to the individual taxpayers in benefits, but it is structured very conservatively. We know that things can change, and I think that's part of it, is that we try to be careful to make sure that this is something the state can do.
Will you further yield?
I'll yield.
But what I'm looking at here, over the 6 years basically, it shows a $330 million deficit, but that's showing little or any growth in the change of revenue. And we've done much better than 2%, and that's the example that's being used here. Is that correct?
We certainly feel like that more income tax cuts could be done in the future, that we've made a conservative approach. We want to protect our AAA bond rating, and the leadership here has shown great judgment in bringing this forward.
One final question.
I'll yield.
Well, I guess what I'm saying, it seems to me that we've been more than conservative here, because we're showing positive numbers for the first 3 years, and if there is a problem, as you say, with your trigger in there that before we go to 5.5, we have to approve it as well as the governor sign it. So it seems to me you've been very prudent in how you've negotiated. Is that not true?
I think the senator knows of what he speaks. Thank you. I'll yield the well.
No further questions. Chair recognizes Senator from the 27th. Speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I rise in support of this bill, and just want to remind everyone and thank President Trump. The reason we have this bill before us, the reason we're able to discuss this is, again, because of the federal tax breaks that President Trump signed into law a few months back. I also want to thank each and every member of our caucus for standing up for our constituents. The past 4 or 5, maybe even 6 days, it's been kind of stressful. It's been strenuous. We've been attacked by the media. We've been attacked by the left. Big corporate's gone after us, and we've still stayed strong. We even stayed strong against our own governor. And while I won't be here next session, I want all of y'all to remember that you did this together as a caucus. You did what you felt like you were supposed to do in representing your constituents. You acted as a body of government independently. Please remember that going forward. Also, with regards to losing the Delta tax exemption, something that has not really been discussed is that Delta still receives a tax discount and the reduction of the state corporate income tax. So what we've done is we haven't picked winners and losers. We haven't said, Delta, you get the special tax decrease. We have said all of Georgia benefit in this tax reduction. And that is what good policy looks like. It's when we pass bills and we give tax reductions where everyone benefits and not just a special interest. And with that, Mr. President, I will yield the well.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 51st. Speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wouldn't want to let a chance like this pass me by either. This is a historic day in Georgia. It's a great day to be a senator representing the great folks of the 51st District, not to borrow a line from our good friend over here from South Georgia, but it is a great day. And I think this is an opportunity for us to be nonpartisan in this vote. I'd like to encourage our friends from the other side of the aisle to vote for this bill, because we're going to send this money back to where it belongs. We're going to send it back to the taxpayers of Georgia, the people that are paying it every year. And it is a lot of the efforts that come from our president in the White House. Regardless of whether he or she is a Republican or a Democrat president, or whether the House or the Senate and Congress is controlled by the Democrats or Republicans, shouldn't matter. The fact is that they've cut taxes on the taxpayers of our country, and we should do the same thing, and this bill does that. It returns the money back where it belongs to the people of Georgia. And I want to give a big shout out to our governor. Governor Deal has led this state for 8 years. A lot of us, there's at least 12 of us that came in the same time that he was elected. And we all took the oath of office at the same time, and we've worked hard every day during those 8 years to put these dollars that we are entrusted to spend to good use. And I can say without a lot of doubt that we have done that. We have spent this money wisely, but it's time to give this money back to where it belongs, and that is to the people of Georgia. I'd like to also give a shout out to our leader of this chamber, the man that stands behind us every time we're in this podium up here. President of this chamber, the Lieutenant Governor, deserves credit for this as well. He's led on this issue. He's worked hard over the years to make sure this money is spent wisely, and he too has led on the effort to get this money back where it belongs to the people of Georgia. And I'll shout out also to the Speaker of the House across the aisle. He and the House of Representatives have passed this bill, and they too support giving this money back. And it's now up to us, the 56 people that sit in this room. You can vote green or red. I encourage every one of us to vote green on this bill and send this bill back to the governor's desk for signature with the unanimous vote, and I hope you'll have the courage to do so.
Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute? Is there objection? Without objection, the committee substitute is adopted. Now, does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agree in a Board of Committee which fail pass the bill? Chairs none. Board of Committees agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? Chairs none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Question is on to pass the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 44 and the nays are 10. This bill, IMC records constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Yeah. Chair recognizes Senator from the ninth.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask unanimous consent to immediately transmit HB 918.
Senator is moving for immediate transmittal. Is there objection? Without objection, the bill will be immediately transmitted to the House. Secretary now will read House Bill 287.
House Bill 287 by Representative Kirby of the 114th and others. The bill will be titled Enactment Chapter 2 of Title 40 of the OCGA relating to registration and licensing of motor vehicles so as to provide for the issuance of special license plates honoring family members of service members killed in action at no cost to eligible family members and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 32nd to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow senators, I have the privilege to commend to you House Bill 287 related to Gold Star license plates. This bill was recommitted from last year. I had the honor earlier this year of attending the first annual ceremony honoring Gold Star fathers. There's always been a ceremony for Gold Star mothers, and hearing the senator from the 15th speak so eloquently about these families. There are many Gold Star families in our state, and currently they're entitled to one free license plate to honor their loved one that was lost in action. This bill allows for a second free license plate for Gold Star families because, as you know, many people have more than one vehicle, and sometimes the family members don't live in the same household anymore. So I think this is a very straightforward and good bill that honors our fallen military personnel, and I would ask for your favorable consideration. I'll be happy to answer questions
No
or
questions,
yield the
Senator.
will.
Thank you. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection agreed in the Port of Committee which fair will pass the bill? Chair is none. Port of Committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Any objections? Chair is none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The question is on the pass of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. And Secretary will unlock the machine. While we're voting, let me have the Senate's attention just for a moment, if I might. First of all, I would ask that the Senate join me in wishing the senator from the 44th a very happy birthday today. Glad to recognize you in a very special way on this special day. The posture that we're going to be in upon completion of this bill is the Senate will stand at ease until 1:15. As many of you know, that the House is not going in until 1. We are waiting on action from them as it pertains to the amended budget, along with other items. So we will be standing at ease until 1:15 to see if the House has intentions to move that forward. If not, we will take it up at a later date. On the pass of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0, and this bill having received requisite constitutional majority is therefore adopted. Chair recognizes Senator from 36 for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize. I failed to cast a vote for that good bill. I want to invite you to lunch in the Working Families Caucus lunchroom over at 307. We'll be hearing from Senator Gooch and Representative Jay Powell, who are going to continue the conversation about broadband across the state. The railroad workers are sponsoring our lunch, and you are welcome to join us, and hope some of us can get in there and get out and be back here by 1:15. We'll have a good short discussion and a good hot meal. Thank you. CLOB 307.
Thank you, Senator. Stand at ease until 1:15.